Every city has its shadows, every family has its secrets, and every night, somewhere in the dark, someone lives a story that should never be told. Tonight, I've gathered some of the most chilling horror tales, stories that will crawl under your skin and stay there long after the video ends. So if you're brave enough, keep watching, because once you start, there's no turning back. Story 1. The Man in Apartment 6B. Everyone thinks the scariest stories are about ghosts, but the truth is, nothing is more terrifying than people. And when Emily moved into her new apartment, she thought the man in 6B was just a strange neighbor. She had no idea he was watching her every move. Emily Reed was 27, eager to start fresh. After ending a long relationship and switching jobs, she found a cheap apartment in a building just outside the city. It wasn't perfect. The walls were thin, the pipes groaned, and the hallways always smelled faintly of bleach. But it was hers, a place to start over. Her unit, 6A, was small but cozy. One bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a balcony overlooking the street. She told herself she'd decorate slowly, turn it into something warm. But on her first night, she noticed something unsettling. The apartment across from hers, 6B, had no name on the mailbox. No furniture she could see through the cracked blinds. Just a dim light glowing at all hours. A week later, she finally met him. She was coming home late from work when she saw him unlocking the door to 6B. He was tall, maybe mid-40s, with thinning hair and clothes that looked slightly too big. Their eyes met. He didn't smile, didn't speak, just stared for a second too long before slipping inside. Emily told herself not to overthink it. Big cities had all kinds of people. But that night, as she got ready for bed, she noticed something. Her blinds were open just a crack, and through the gap, she could see a faint glow. The man's window. He was standing there, facing her apartment, not moving. The next few nights were restless. She'd hear footsteps in the hallway at odd hours. Slow, dragging, stopping right outside her door. Sometimes there was a faint clicking sound, like someone gently testing her lock. She called the building manager. He brushed it off. Probably the pipes, or someone walking their dog. Don't worry, the guy in 6BS been here forever. Keeps to himself. But that didn't comfort her, because Emily had noticed something the manager hadn't. The man never left. She never saw him going to work, never carrying groceries. And yet, she could hear him, always moving, always pacing. Started small. One morning, she found a piece of paper slipped under her door. In shaky handwriting, "You left your balcony unlocked last night." Her stomach dropped. She hadn't told anyone about the balcony. And worse, it had been unlocked. She went straight to the manager, demanding answers. He sighed. "Look, if he bothers you, I'll talk to him. But he's harmless. Just lonely." Emily wanted to believe him, but the next note proved otherwise. "You look sad when you brush your hair. Don't be sad." Her hands shook as she read it. He had been watching her, from inside her own apartment. She called the police. 2 officers showed up, knocked on 6BS door. The man answered calmly, smiled politely, invited them in. After 20 minutes, they left. "Nothing we can do," one officer told her. "The place is empty. No signs of trespassing. He seems odd, but not dangerous. If he contacts you directly again, call us." Emily stood frozen in the hallway. She knew they were wrong, because when the officer had turned his back, she'd glanced into the man's apartment. It wasn't empty, not at all. On the far wall was a corkboard, covered with dozens of photographs. All of her. She tried to ignore it, tried to convince herself she was imagining things. But the harassment escalated. Her toothbrush was damp before she used it. Her shoes were rearranged overnight. Once, she woke up to find her phone missing from the nightstand, only for it to reappear the next day with the Photos app mysteriously wiped clean. She bought extra locks, installed cameras, but every morning, the footage was corrupted, static-filled, as though someone had erased only the hours she slept. One night, after weeks of fear, she heard it again, the slow, dragging footsteps in the hall. But this time, they didn't stop at her door. They moved toward the balcony. Her stomach twisted. She ran to the sliding door and froze. The blinds swayed gently, and pressed against the glass from outside was a face. The man in 6B, smiling. She screamed, grabbed the phone, called 911. By the time police arrived, he was gone. The report was filed, but once again, nothing was done. No forced entry. No evidence. Emily decided to leave. She packed her things, planning to move the next morning. But that night, exhaustion overtook her. She fell asleep fully dressed, suitcase by the door. She woke to silence, then realized something was wrong. Her phone was gone. Her suitcase gone. Even the locks on her door had been removed, screws neatly placed on the floor as if someone had been working while she slept. Her chest tightened. Slowly, she turned toward the corner of the room. He was there, the man from 6B, sitting calmly in her chair. This time he wasn't just watching. He was holding a knife, and he spoke, his voice calm, almost gentle. I told you, you shouldn't be sad. You don't have to be alone anymore. Not now. Emily opened her mouth to scream, but he was already moving. When police entered apartment 6A the next morning, it was spotless. No blood, no struggle. Emily was gone. The man in 6B was gone too. His apartment stood empty, stripped bare, as if no one had ever lived there. But on the far wall, the officers found something chilling. A corkboard filled with photographs. Every picture was of Emily, sleeping, cooking, brushing her hair. Some taken inside her apartment, some from the balcony. And the final photo, taped in the center, showed her sleeping peacefully in her bed. Except in the corner of the shot, half hidden in the shadows, the man's face stared back. No one ever saw Emily again, and no one ever saw the man in 6B. Some believe he killed her and hid the evidence. Others think he took her somewhere else, keeping her alive the way he kept others before her. But the most disturbing part? When the building manager checked the records, there was never anyone registered as living in 6B. So the next time you hear footsteps outside your door at night, ask yourself, is it just a neighbor? Or is it someone who already has a key? Story 2. The elevator that shouldn't stop. Everyone's been in a quiet elevator at night. The flickering light, the hum of machinery. You press your floor, you wait, you get out. Simple. But in one office building downtown, there's an elevator that doesn't follow the rules. And when it stops on the wrong floor, you might never come back. Daniel, you hated late shifts. As a junior accountant in a prestigious law firm, he was always the one stuck with cleanup work. Cross-checking invoices, filling out endless spreadsheets, balancing numbers nobody else cared about. Most nights, by the time he shut down his computer, the building was nearly empty. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, cold and sterile, while the city outside seemed to pulse with life he wasn't part of. That Friday, the office clock read 12:47 a.m. when he finally packed his bag and trudged toward the elevators. The halls always felt different at night. Quieter, heavier, as though the building itself was listening. He pressed the button. The doors slid open. Empty, of course. Daniel stepped inside, hit L for lobby, and leaned against the wall. The hum of descent was familiar, almost comforting. He closed his eyes. Then the panel flickered. The button for L went dark, and a new one lit up. B3. Daniel frowned. The building only had 2 basements. B1 for parking, B2 for storage. There was no B3. The elevator shuddered, slowed, and stopped. Ding. The doors slid open. Beyond the threshold stretched a hallway. Concrete walls glistening with moisture. Pipes overhead dripping steadily. And at the far end, a faint red glow, like an exit sign that wasn't working properly. A smell of rust and mold filled the cab. Daniel leaned forward, heart pounding. Maybe construction, but he hadn't seen any notices. Then movement. Something shifted at the end of the hall, too fast to identify, and footsteps echoed faintly, but wrong, out of rhythm like someone walking backward. Daniel jabbed the closed door button. The doors slid shut, painfully slow, groaning as if reluctant to protect him. And just before they sealed, he saw it, a pale face leaning out of the dark, smiling. The elevator lurched violently, then resumed its descent. When the doors opened again, it was the lobby, perfectly normal. Daniel stumbled out, shaken. The security guard at the desk frowned. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Daniel opened his mouth. But stopped. What would he say? That he'd just discovered a basement floor that didn't exist? He forced a laugh. Just tired. Long night. And hurried out into the cold air. All weekend, Daniel couldn't stop thinking about it. The hallway, that face, the smell of mold and rust. Monday night, he stayed late again. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to know if it was real. At 12:13 a.m., he pressed the elevator button. This time, the ride was ordinary. Lobby doors opened as expected. Relief and disappointment twisted in his chest. But when he got home, something impossible waited on his desk. A black keycard, unmarked, smooth, except for one thing. A single word embossed faintly in silver. B3. Daniel stared at it. He never brought it home. He never saw it before. The building only issued white keycards. Employees wore them on lanyards, printed with names and photos. This was different, heavy, cold to the touch, almost humming in his hand. And though no one could have entered his locked apartment, the card had been placed neatly in the center of his desk, as if waiting for him. He should have thrown it away, but he didn't. Tuesday night, 1:02 a.m. Daniel entered the elevator. The lobby was silent, the security guard asleep at his desk. He slid the black keycard across the panel. Every button went dark. The display flickered. Then, slowly, a single new button appeared. B3. His breath caught. Against every rational thought, he pressed it. The elevator sank. Lower. Deeper. The numbers ticked past B2 into blank space. The cab groaned, as if straining against some unseen weight. And then, ding, the doors opened. The same hallway stretched before him. This time, Daniel stepped out. The floor was damp, echoing his footsteps too loudly. Pipes hissed overhead. On both sides were dozens of doors, each painted black. And on each a nameplate. He leaned close to one. The letters were worn, but still legible. Daniel Yu. His heart froze. He staggered to the next door. Another name, then another. Every door bore the name of someone who worked in the building. People he saw every day. People who had quietly stopped showing up over the years. Compelled, Daniel pushed one door open. Inside was an office, identical to his own. Same desk, same papers, same coffee mug. But sitting at the desk was another Daniel. His own face. Skin pale, eyes dark and hollow, mouth stretched into a grotesque smile. The thing lifted its hand in perfect sync with him. A mirror, but wrong. Daniel slammed the door shut, heart hammering. From deeper in the hallway, whispers rose. Dozens of voices, overlapping, calling his name. Panic surged. Daniel sprinted back to the elevator, slamming the button. The doors slid open, but inside wasn't the cab. It was the hallway again. Dozens of doors now stood open, and from them stepped figures, copies of himself, each smiling, each whispering the same word in unison. Stay! Daniel pounded on the walls, screamed, but the concrete stretched endlessly, swallowing sound. Above, the elevator machinery whirred faintly, as if still moving, but not for him. He had been filed away. The next morning, the security guard noticed Daniel's car still in the lot. His office was untouched, his jacket draped over the chair. His bag sat by the desk. But Daniel Yu was gone. Investigators later checked the elevator's hidden log. Every ride was listed except Daniel's last one. His entry simply read, Destination, B3. In a locked drawer near the security desk, officers discovered dozens of black keycards, each faintly scratched with names of employees who had quit or resigned. On Daniel's desk, they found one last card. It bore a single word, yours. No body, no struggle, no trace, because Daniel Yu wasn't killed. He was filed away, behind one of those black doors, in a hallway that shouldn't exist. Another version of him now sits at a desk, smiling, waiting for the next late-night worker to press the wrong button. So if you ever find yourself in an elevator, alone after midnight, and a new floor lights up, don't step out. Don't even look. Because once you do, you might never see daylight again. Story 3. The House That Remembers. Some houses are just bricks and wood. Some houses are alive. And when they remember you, you can never really leave. Lydia Cross wasn't looking for anything special. After her divorce, she just wanted a place that was hers. A space untouched by memories of her ex-husband's shouting. The way his footsteps used to thunder through their apartment like constant reminders of her failures. She scrolled endlessly through rental listings until one picture stopped her. A little house on Alder Lane. 2 stories, shutters painted a dull green, ivy curling up the siding like long fingers. The price shocked her. Less than half of anything else in the area. When she called, the landlord answered on the first ring. His voice was quick, eager. Yes, yes, Alder Lane. Still available. You want it? You can move in tomorrow. Tomorrow? She hesitated. Don't you want to meet first? Credit check? Proof of income? Paperwork's simple. He cut her off. I'll handle it. People don't stay long in that house. But you'll love it here. The way he said it unsettled her. But she was desperate. Cheap rent, no questions asked. She signed the papers that afternoon. At first, the house seemed ordinary. Dusty, creaky, a little damp. But nothing she couldn't handle. The first night, she dreamed. She was walking the halls of the house. But they looked different. Older, wallpaper patterned with faded roses. Furniture she didn't own. She stopped in front of a mirror, and in the reflection stood another woman. Pale skin, dark hair, eyes wide with terror. Lydia jolted awake, drenched in sweat. She shook it off, just stress. But when she went downstairs the next morning, she froze. The chair at the head of the dining table was pulled out, as if someone had been sitting there, waiting. She lived alone. A few days later, Lydia ran errands in town. At the grocery store, she chatted with the cashier, mentioning casually that she'd moved into the Alder Lane house. The cashier's smile faltered. Oh, that place. An older woman in line leaned forward, voice low. You should leave, dear. That house remembers. Lydia frowned. What does that mean? But the woman just shook her head, lips pressed tight. You'll see. The dreams returned. Night after night, the pale woman stared at her from mirrors, her lips moving silently as though trying to warn her. Then came the whispers, first soft, like wind through cracks, then clearer. A woman's voice, desperate. "He won't let me leave, please, don't stay." Lydia searched every corner of the house. Closet, attic, basement. In the basement, she noticed a board loose against the wall. She pulled it free. Behind it was an old photograph. The woman from her dreams, staring straight at the camera, eyes hollow, lips thin. Lydia dropped it, heart hammering. The longer she lived there, the stranger the house became. One night, she locked her bedroom door. The next morning, it stood open. Another night, she smelled perfume drifting through the halls. Old-fashioned, floral, cloying. She owned no such bottle. And sometimes the house changed. She'd blink and the wallpaper would be different. Blink again and furniture appeared where none had been. The house was showing her how it used to be. And always, out of the corner of her eye, the pale woman stood watching. Unable to ignore it, Lydia searched public records. The house once belonged to a man named Charles Avery. In the 1950s, neighbors said he kept his wife isolated. She was rarely seen outside. Whispers spread that she screamed at night, though Charles always denied it. Then one evening she vanished. Charles told everyone she'd run away, but no one ever saw her again. A year later, Charles hanged himself in the attic. And the police? They wrote it off as tragedy. No body, no investigation. The attic called to her. At night, she heard faint footsteps pacing above. One stormy evening, she finally pulled down the ladder. The air reeked of mildew and dust. Cobwebs clung to her hair as she crept inside. In the corner sat a chair, and above it, a rope, frayed and dangling from the beam. Scratched deep into the wood beside it were words. "She's still here." The rope swayed though the air was still. The attic door slammed shut behind her. After that night, the whispers became screams. The pale woman appeared constantly, in windows, mirrors, even reflections in darkened glass. Sometimes at the foot of Lydia's bed, lips moving, words drowned by static in her ears. Finally, Lydia heard her clearly. "He never left." Shaking, Lydia whispered, "Who?" The woman's eyes widened in terror. "The house keeps him, keeps us all. And soon you." That night, Lydia dreamed of Charles Avery. His body bloated and twisted, rope burns black around his neck, eyes sunk into rot. He smiled at her in the dream, and when she woke, her bedroom door was locked from the outside. Days blurred together. Lydia couldn't escape. When she tried the front door, it opened only to another hallway of the house. Windows showed nothing but walls. The house folded in on itself, trapping her in a maze of its own memory. And worse, it was changing her. Her reflection began to shift. Hair darkening, skin paling. She was becoming the woman in the photograph. The house was rewriting her. On her last night, Lydia heard both voices. The wife's terrified screams and Charles's guttural laughter. The walls wept water. The floorboards pulsed beneath her feet like a living heart. She stumbled into the hallway mirror and froze. It wasn't her reflection staring back anymore. It was the pale woman's face, hollow-eyed, broken. And behind her stood Charles Avery, his body bloated, rope burns digging deep into his neck. His grin stretched unnaturally wide. He leaned close, his breath fogging the glass. "You see? Now we're a family again." Lydia's blood ran cold. She understood at last. The house hadn't been keeping her prisoner at random. It was remaking her, reshaping her into the missing wife, filling the role Charles demanded, the role the house itself craved. She screamed, pounding on the glass, but her reflection didn't move. It only stared back with lifeless eyes, and Charles's hands slid over her shoulders in the reflection, holding her there like a groom embracing his bride. Her voice broke as she whispered, "No, I'm not her." But the house didn't care. It only needed the role filled. The lights flickered once, twice, and went out. Weeks later, a for rent sign appeared outside Alder Lane. The landlord greeted a new tenant with the same eager smile. "It's a lovely place, very affordable, perfect for someone like you." Inside, the dining room chair was already pulled out, and in the mirror at the end of the hall, a pale woman with dark hair watched closely. But now it wasn't the same woman from before. It was Lydia, her lips pressed together in a trembling line, eyes begging silently. Behind her, Charles stood, grinning, rope still biting into his throat. The family was whole again, at least until the house grew hungry once more. Some houses don't forget. They remember every laugh, every scream, every death. And when you move in, they remember you. So next time you find a house too cheap to be true, ask yourself why. Because once a house remembers you, you'll never leave it behind. Story 4. The Archive of Forgotten Voices. Every city hides secrets. Some rot in forgotten tunnels. Some fester in abandoned hospitals. But the darkest secrets aren't hidden at all. They're cataloged, organized, filed away, waiting for the next curious fool who dares to listen. This is the story of Claire Maddox and the cursed archive that devoured her voice. Claire Maddox wasn't like the rest of her classmates. Most journalism students were satisfied with ghost tours, Halloween legends, or recycled newspaper clippings. But Claire wanted more. She wanted to find a story no one else would dare to write. A story that would make her professor lean forward and remember her name. So when the assignment landed on her desk, write a paper on urban legends in modern cities, her classmates groaned. Claire smiled. That night, she had dinner with her uncle, a tired city maintenance worker. Between mouthfuls of mashed potatoes, she asked casually, "Uncle Dan, what's the creepiest thing you've seen working for the city?" His fork froze. His jaw tightened. "There's a basement under City Hall," he muttered. "Been sealed off for decades. They used to keep records there. People say, you can still hear voices." Claire leaned forward. Voices? He stabbed his food, eyes darting toward the window. "Just stories. Don't go down there, Claire." "I mean it." Which, of course, guaranteed that she would. City Hall was laughably easy to enter after hours. A $50 bribe to the night guard, a fake ID badge she printed in the journalism lab, and she was inside. The stairwell was colder than it should have been. Each step downward carried the heavy smell of rust and mildew. At the bottom, a thick metal door groaned open. Her flashlight beam cut through layers of dust, illuminating an ocean of shelves. Each shelf groaned under the weight of dozens of metal boxes, stacked neatly, each one carefully labeled by hand. The writing was faded but legible. Case number 211, August 1934, male, 42 missing. Case number 318, January 1949, female, 19 vanished. Case number 412, March 1972, child, 10 unresolved. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Her pulse quickened. This wasn't folklore. This wasn't urban legend. This was something real. She pried open the first box. Inside, a reel-to-reel tape, heavy and dust-caked. Back in her apartment, she set up her uncle's old player. The machine whirred. The tape hissed. And then a man's trembling voice spilled through the static. "It keeps calling me. Not outside and not inside. It's in the walls. Always whispering. If I answer, I'm not me anymore. I'm not. The tape cut off. Claire sat frozen, breath caught in her throat. She rewound, played it again, then again. Each time, the words dug deeper beneath her skin. The next night, she returned to the basement. This time, she carried out as many tapes as her backpack could hold. And every night after, she sat in her tiny apartment with curtains drawn, headphones clamped to her ears, listening until dawn. She discovered a horrifying pattern. The whisper phase, it began with a faint hum. Then a familiar voice would call the victim's name. A mother, a child, a lover. Tom, it's me. Come closer. Evelyn, don't leave me out here. The pleading phase, more voices joined in. Desperate, begging. Open the wall. They're keeping us inside. Help us. Please. It's so dark. Knocks and scratches bled through the recordings, as though fists hammered from behind wooden panels. The replacement phase, and always the same ending. The victim's voice would hollow, flatten, resign. Case filed. I'm not me anymore. They're in my skin. Then silence. Claire typed furiously, convinced she had uncovered something massive. This wasn't a school paper anymore. This was an expose, a book, career. Until one night, she froze. On a tape from 1972, beneath the static, a faint whisper emerged. Claire! Her headphones slipped off. Her skin prickled with cold. It had to be a coincidence, a trick of the noise. But when she replayed the section, louder this time, there was no mistake. Claire! Her name. Clear. Cold. She laughed nervously. It's nothing. Just a scratch. But she didn't sleep that night. The whispers multiplied. Soon they weren't just on the reels. They hummed inside her apartment walls. She unplugged her fridge, her laptop, her lamps, convinced it was electrical interference. But the sound remained, and when she pressed her ear to the plaster, she heard her own voice whispering back, "Don't listen, don't listen." Back to the basement. She needed answers, but something was wrong. The shelves had shifted, corridors twisted into suffocating dead ends. At the far end sat a single box. Its label was fresh, the ink still wet. Case number 522, February 2025. Claire Maddox, age 22, missing. Her breath hitched. Inside a reel-to-reel tape. The sticker bore her own handwriting. Do not play. Of course, she played it. The machine whirred. The tape hissed. Then her own voice spoke. If anyone hears this, it's too late. They wanted me to listen. They needed me to listen. And now they're inside me. I can't stop hearing them. They're in the walls. In my skin. I'm not me anymore. Please don't listen. Don't. The tape cut out. Claire staggered back, bile rising. She had never recorded those words. Through frantic research in old court documents, Claire pieced together fragments of the truth. In the 1930s, the basement wasn't storage. It was a courthouse and execution chamber. A corrupt judge had ordered secret executions of dozens of innocents. Men, women, even children. Convicted without trial, silenced before anyone could defend them. Their last words were recorded on tape as evidence. But those voices were never released. They were locked away, catalogued like trash. Injustice curdled into rage. Rage into despair. Despair into hunger. The voices fused into one parasitic entity. The archive. It didn't care about guilt or innocence. Cared only about survival. Anyone who listened too long became fuel. Anyone who came too close to exposing it was consumed, filed away like the rest. That was the archive's defense. It wasn't protecting itself from fire or hammers. It was protecting itself from truth. Her apartment was silent. For the first time in weeks, no whispers, no hum. Relief washed over her, until she noticed the box, sitting in the middle of her living room. The label read, "Case number 522, filed." Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a reel-to-reel tape, still warm. Her voice whispered, "I'm home now." The walls split with a screech. Blackness poured out, carrying hundreds of voices, clawing, pleading, mocking, sobbing. Hands gripped her ankles, her wrists, her hair, dragging her into the dark. She fought, she screamed, she clawed at the floorboards, and then silence. The chaos stopped, and Claire saw them, faces pressed into the shifting walls around her. Dozens, hundreds, men in tattered suits, women in faded dresses, children clutching broken toys, their eyes hollow, their lips trembling. They weren't monsters, they were victims, innocents executed unjustly, bound here forever. A woman's face pressed close. Her lips moved slowly. "We didn't choose this, but now we are the archive." A child's face appeared beside her. His small voice cracked. "Please, don't let it use you like it used us." Claire sobbed. "No, there has to be a way out." But the shadows closed. The despairing faces melted back into the walls, their pleas drowned in the roar of whispers. Claire's body vanished. Her voice remained. Days later, her professor filed a missing persons report. Police entered her apartment. Empty. Too empty. Not a single piece of furniture remained, except for one object, a reel-to-reel player. Inside, a fresh tape spun endlessly, Claire's voice whispering, "Case hashtag 522, Claire Maddox, filed." And in the basement under City Hall, a new box appeared. The ink on its label was still wet. Some legends aren't myths. They're archives, born of injustice, fed by curiosity, defended by the very voices of the innocent. So the next time you hear a whisper calling your name from the walls, don't answer, because someone somewhere might already be filing your case. And that brings us to the end of tonight's collection of true horror tales. Each story different, yet all of them reminding us of one chilling truth. Sometimes the most terrifying things aren't found in legends or movies, but in the shadows of real life. Thank you for watching all the way through. If these stories sent a shiver down your spine, show your support by hitting the like button. It really helps keep this channel alive. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next set of dark stories waiting for you. And if you know someone who loves a good scare, share this video with them. After all, fear is best when it's shared. Stay safe, stay curious, and whatever you do, don't listen too closely when the dark begins to whisper.